in 2000.
Like you said to Trump, but they're getting greedy.
He said, go out there and rob these houses and bring back the bounty, and then that'll pay your way.
Because Republicans who get endorsement from Georgia carry that they mean anything.
You can't sit on the sidelines any longer. You must get involved in the game. This is your sign.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this very special Wednesday night edition of Small Town Underground. I have a very, very special guest tonight, and we're just a little bit behind, but we just got him linked in. We are going to be speaking with the wonderful Judge Joe Brown tonight, and I'm getting him pulled into the show right now, so you guys just give me just a second, and we're going to bring him on in. So, hang on one sec, Mr. Brown, and I will get you in here.
Yes, sir. Let me put these on so I can hear you better. Okay. Let's see. Let me do one here.
There he is. All right. Wonderful.
Okay.
I'll have to do a little. I'm going to do a little bit of moving around here and get the show shared out. So thank you. I know we're running just a little bit late, but it's so wonderful to have you here tonight. And I'll get everything situated here in just a second. But man, wow, what the legendary Judge Joe Brown. I just want to tell you before we get started. I've watched you in your appearances on InfoWars so many times. Worked with Lucretia Hughes at the big event. We got you patched in over there. We got you patched in with Gordon Rawl in Floyd County. And it's always been an honor. Love what you have to say. And I've been wanting to get you on the show for a while because I really, I've followed everything that you've been talking about up until the Trump presidency. But I really kind of want to pick your brain tonight, Mr. Brown, about like where we're going in the golden age, how you see things unfolding now that we have Trump in office. And you know, we just had this recent SCOTUS pick that came down 5-4, basically honoring the lower court judge's ruling for that they have to pay the $2 billion of fraudulent spending from USAID.
What it is, they don't necessarily have to ultimately pay, but they have to start now. There are proceedings they can go through that may keep them from having to do it.
Right.
All they're doing is one step at a time. They are Article 3 courts below. What happens is the Supreme Court's created by the Constitution. Article 3 says that Congress can create such lesser courts as may be necessary, and then things go up through the proceedings. So what the Trump administration did is tried to jump from the lowest, skipping the intermediary step, and then go to the highest. Or I guess they went through the intermediary step. They were trying to cut through the flack. So there might be other grounds that they can get around that with, but they are supposed to comply with the law. So let's see what happens. And the ruling is that the award was through the previous administration, and that has become a policy. And it's sort of like the king is dead, long live the king. It's the office that does it, not the holder of the office. So
right. Well,
we'll see.
So we got President Trump elected. We have a full Republican House, Senate, majority everything, won by a landslide, and we're well into this year. We're into March. We have seen Elon Musk come through, pretty much going through with the Doge program. I mean, really trying to clean house here. We understand that, especially after the sort of the joint session, that Trump gave, that the Democrats they're not going to support anything that is going on. How do you feel about moving into this year with the golden age, like where we're at and where you think we might be headed?
Well, see, the Democratic Party's policies are not so much political as they are social, supporting an agenda. And that agenda is almost cultish in its intensity from their perspective. So they're not really about ordinary politics. Their concern is not the day-to-day circumstances of American citizens. Their drive is to convert America to their particular cult and its outlook. So they don't care.
Right.
They've got a whole different agenda that drives them, and I doubt that they will cooperate, and they're acting like they won.
Right.
They didn't.
They really are. Well, can you, how on earth, Judge, can a lower court rule and determine what the executive branch can do with the powers? I'm having a hard time understanding this. We see
enough.
Yeah,
I'll explain it.
Okay.
I'm strongly for the Second Amendment, but I'll give you an example of how it goes the other way around. The far left is screeching because a federal district court judge in Texas sort of smacked down Biden and his ATF with their treatment of pistols and pistol braces,
right,
where they tried to outlaw them. So we are applauding that. It is the exact same thing that happened here. What happens is the Supreme Court of the United States has the ultimate say-so, but there are lesser courts to deal with matters of less import or to start things through the process. So that's all we're doing right here. The Trump administration has declined to appeal the ruling that was initially declined to prosecute the appeal that the Biden administration did of the pistol brace ruling. So that's going to stand.
Okay.
But the same thing could happen here. So we don't know. And there are other ways for the Trump administration to accomplish what it was trying to do when it got struck down. And basically the logic for the ruling, I'm not saying I approve of it, but the logic is it's the office that ordered this in the previous administration, and the office is bound in the circumstances with what a predecessor who held office did. It's kind of like the English say, the king is dead, long live the king. In other words,
Right.
our kingship is alive, even if the last occupant just died.
I got you. I believe how the Supreme Court ruled on this basically was they didn't rule on it. They just said it goes back down to a
Yeah.
lower court, so it has standing. And I see exactly. I was thinking about that very same thing of how this was already sort of appropriated beforehand. So I think it's going to be interesting how he handles it going forward. But am I not true in thinking that Congress can stop this stuff from the beginning anyway? Right? I mean, we're
Well,
doing.
here's the thing. When it comes to national diplomacy, international aspects of it, the Constitution makes the president the chief diplomatic officer of the United States. He can negotiate treaties and other such stuff. He can submit them to Congress or the Senate anyway for ratification. And if they are ratified, they become part of the supreme law of the land, like the amendments to Constitution and those laws that are passed to carry out the Constitution, not just administrative matters. Now, that being the case, he has the ultimate say so. This was part of the defense for the Mar-a-Lago thing, where this idiot Smith was going after him for supposedly
Yes.
not honoring the classification system, because the law is the president having absolute authority as chief diplomat and as commander in chief can classify or declassify anything he chooses in any fashion he wishes. And the case is, for those who are interested, United States Department of the Navy versus Egan, EGAN, a 1988 U.S. Supreme Court case, and there are various and sundry concurring opinions. And if you read them, you can get the gist of it. Now, that said, Congress cannot dictate to the president what he does as the diplomat. That's up to him, but it controls the purse string. So if it costs money, they can fund it or not fund it. They can pass an enablement and funding bill, an enablement and appropriations bill. They do have the authority to declare war, which puts the president in a position of having to carry that declaration out as commander in chief, but generally they cannot dictate to the president what he does in terms of foreign policy, except they can do it in a negative. They can forbid something being done, or they can forbid money being spent for some specific purpose.
Okay. Got you. So what do you make of these? Okay, we hit the ground running with Donald Trump. I mean, we got everything we want. We're getting this dream team that we've all been hoping for. I know we've got a little snags along the way, you know, with the Epstein list and how they're laying this out, but all of these executive orders. Now, obviously, none of this is going to matter in a hill of beans if we don't get Congress to act and get some of this stuff implemented in law, correct? I mean, we're just floating
That's
until...
about right.
Okay.
Appropriations and Enablement Acts. There are some things that the president can do, executive orders, if there's no money that's involved, or even if there is money, if there are discretionary funds that he has available to spend, or there are budgets that he has wiggle room in, he can work that way. But Congress controls the money, the executive controls the execution of laws, and the courts deal with interpretation and application of the laws.
Right. Yeah, you're certainly correct.
Checks and balances, and you have an armed population under the Second Amendment that serves as an offset to the government entirely.
Absolutely. I don't know if you know a lot about Georgia, but we're witnessing a session with over like 400 bills going through our legislative session right now, and it's mind-boggling to try to keep up with all this. To me, it feels like that the state of Georgia is sort of closing the doors to the golden age. Do you see that where you're at, or do you see that your legislatures are actually welcoming this?
Well, it depends on who's controlling the legislative body. If it's Democratic,
Sure,
it's in the ascendancy. They have this social agenda that is all important and all encompassing. Forget all of the ordinary things that concern politics. Georgia, you have a problem right now down in Fulton County with extreme defiance of the law and ethics and a lot of other things and a lot of unaccounted for money. And I imagine that the Georgia legislature has to say, well, we may have had a gentleman's agreement about how we're going to behave, but somebody down there is not taking that to heart, and we've got a lot of missing funds. And I think what's going on is when Trump got in the first time, he was not privy to politics other than being somebody behind the throne who financed a lot of people.
Right.
But the guy behind the throne got on the throne, and he was new to this game. And I think he gave the Republican Party their wish list with as a caveat that I expressed long ago. I said he's probably going to give them everything they want, but then start firing people for their ineptitude and say, hey, see, I gave you what you want, but this guy or this woman can't handle it.
Right.
So they have to go and I get someone in. But I think he got cheated out of the election in spite of what mainstream media may lie about. Look what's going on down in Arizona, where they had 10,000 plus votes cast by somebody's with the same social security number. So, yeah, you get these kind of things, but they don't happen according to mainstream media.
Right.
So, what you're getting down in Georgia is a lack of attention that had been paid because there was, I imagine, an assumption or a presumption that people would follow the law, but now they're beginning to see that's not necessarily the case, including the aspersions that would be thrown upon the feet of Miss Willis, who
Yes, I was
seems
going to ask
to
you
have
about
been
that.
Miss Big Mouth, and in the course of her opening her mouth instead of taking the Fifth Amendment, or even declining to take the stand when Judge McAfee allowed, like he said, why are you taking a stand? We're still trying to work out whether that's necessary. So
Right.
she went up there and she incriminated herself and a lot of other people. And it looks like you have exposed in your state a huge money laundering scheme.
Yes.
You've got at least $10 million down in Fulton County that seems to have disappeared. That's $7.5 million to catch up with past due prosecutions, and the failure to comply with Georgia law that says anybody incarcerated for more than 45 days has to have been indicted or be released.
Yes.
And there are many, many prisoners who've been in much longer than that with no indictment. That was supposed to be catch-up money. $2 million for prosecuting sex crimes, and $500,000 for juvenile matters, and it all seems to have flown someplace, and nobody knows where that is, but it was delivered to Miss Willis, so she's being held to the carpet to account for what did you do with the state's money.
Right. And so
now,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say there's an interesting thing. The state legislative committee can now appeal to the General Assembly, and one of the remedies they have is ordering the sergeant at arms to physically arrest her and bring her in custody before them to answer. That would be quite
right. And now see,
interesting.
So the Fonnie Willis case, it amazes me because we have a Republican leadership, Republican majority in this state. We had a senator, our state senator Colton Moore, who called for a special session of Fonnie Willis, and he was basically censured for that, amongst many other things that have happened this year. But our government will not intervene. Our attorney general will not intervene and shut this RICO case down. And I find that fascinating because they have the power to do it. They've already ruled again. They've already removed her from this case. But again, Georgia is just still going. This case is just still ongoing, and nobody understands why we can't intervene in this.
Well, I think it's going to solve itself because I have a sneaking suspicion that Miss Fannie Willis, and I call her that because I remember when she was born, I went to school with her father, and for a number of reasons, I think she got named Fannie. But anyway, the affectation Fonnie, that's her business. I just can't remember it. But I think she's going to wind up looking at some jail time seriously. When she ran her mouth off and she got to talking about Attorney Wade, I have a sneaking suspicion that Attorney Wade is trying to bargain his way into an offense he might plead guilty to with a 5-year sentencing cap. In the federal system, you can't plea bargain for time. That's up to a judge. So we have money laundering, false statements to federal agencies and agents, specifically IRS. She said she didn't have $8,500 to pay taxes, but
Right.
then she testified under oath she had 15,000 in the cookie jar at
Right.
the same time. And then all of the cash transactions, I think, is part of a scheme that's got to do with misappropriation of funds. See, she whines from various and sundry receptive pulpits that she's getting picked on because of what she is, but
Right.
there's actually no one she had to answer to, and she approved preliminary fees to Wade for work that is a long practitioner of criminal law and as a criminal court judge I find extremely excessive. $720,000 for preliminary work, and to put that into context, the president of the United States doesn't make but 430 or 40,000 a year.
Right.
The attorney general, who handles all of the business of the United States, gets about 360,000, and the Supreme Chief Justice of your Supreme Court gets about 240, 250,000 with all of the benefits accruing. So here's somebody that hasn't even got a matter set for trial getting 720,000, and at the rate she was approving, it probably would have wound up between 6.5 and about $8 million tab that nobody had to approve but her, and they would have split the money under the table.
Right.
Or over the table or over the bed, whatever it was.
Obviously, if you kept up with the case, yeah.
Yeah, what's going on here? And see, what's going to happen is I have a sneaking suspicion Wade has already given testimony to select committees that he discussed in D.C. with Kamala Harris, with Fannie Willis, with Letitia James, with Bragg, with Smith, how they were going to prosecute Trump. Now,
right.
That means they had a conscious objective that they were all cooperating or collaborating and achieving. What does that mean? That means it's a conspiracy.
Right.
Because under American law, if you conspire or agree to do something, that is, get somebody, even if you attempt to accomplish it in a legal way, you are guilty of a felony conspiracy. I'll give you an example. Let's supposing that Walmart is going to move into a new town. So you have 19 merchants into town. They decide they're going to drastically drop the price on a certain line of products. Okay, that sounds good. But let's supposing they've had meetings saying maybe we can keep Walmart out if we drop these prices so they're too low for Walmart to operate. Now, that means you're talking about restraint of trade, which is conspiring to reduce that. So ordinarily reducing prices is nothing criminal, but because you did it with that purpose, it's now a crime.
Right.
So you see, when they met up in the White House, if any one person did anything, and you can say Fannie Willis, or you can say Smith, or you can say Letitia James, you can say Bragg, they went after Mr. Trump, and that makes it an overt act which binds all of them into the consequences of probable cause being established that a conspiracy occurred, which means evidence changes. It's not quite as strict because a conspiracy is viewed as so dangerous. So anything anybody did can be used against everybody else. And we're going to have a nice little dance routine when it comes to who goes to jail. And I think our new attorney general will probably wind up getting a set of special prosecutors properly appointed so that can be taken care of. And we might see some law enforcement officials at the highest level singing and dancing in front of a jury. So one other thing too, you note all of the resistance to ICE that mayors and governors have been expressing.
Yes.
Well, the law is Title 8, Section 1324 of the United States Criminal Codes and what they're doing relative to illegal aliens is in fact felonious and subjects them to, for the most part, something with a 10-year cap in terms of sentence, and some of them to 20 years in a federal penitentiary. And if there's some of them are lucky, they might be able to plead out to 5 years, or at least a 5-year cap sentence.
Right. Now that brings me to my next question.
Real cute.
So, Judge, how do we get here? Because my little background, I'm a bail bondsman. I know a lot about the law. I've been doing it 25 years. Well familiar with the court systems. How on earth did our judicial system get this far out of bounds? I grew up as a kid watching you on TV. We used to have law and order in this country. And for the most part, in reality, of course, where I live, my sheriff's a good sheriff. We have court systems, but what we're talking about here, I don't think these people even care that they're breaking the law. Like, how do we get to this point?
Now, if you're a bondsman, what is the worst category of people that you have to deal with? Con men.
Yes. Sure, absolutely.
The con man thinks he is immune. Nobody's smart enough to catch him, even if his scams are quite obvious and out in the open. He thinks he's immune. There is no way you can trust him or her to do right, and they lack conscience because to them they're not doing wrong.
Right.
Now, how long has it been? 58 years ago, I had a professor at UCLA. It was a political science professor. I had this woman for a year. I wound up being her teaching assistant. And she was a visiting professor from the University of Moscow. And at one time, she'd actually run propaganda for the KGB, and before that, the NKVD. She was the highest ranking woman on the Soviet Politburo at one time. Now, she made some observations when she taught her course, and she says America is in grave danger of becoming a fascist nation. She said, not from some jackboot-wearing, goose-stepping political thugs, but as she put it, from some pink panty-wearing, long-haired beatniks who, being odd out, were scared and terrified of anybody else because they feared being put in check. So they would support the worst examples of fascism if they thought it would protect their positions, even though they would not realize how soon that oppression would be brought to bear on them. So we have the pink panty wearing, long haired beatniks, and you see what they're doing right now. Sure.
They've infiltrated our college.
Everything's rainbow these days.
Right.
Yeah. So everything's rainbow today, and they feel they run it, which is one of the problems with the Democratic Party and their resistance to Mr. Trump. And that is they're trying to effectively emasculate the country. Now, when you violate the yin-yang principle, you get a real big problem. And they look at Mr. Donald Trump is standing right in the pathway, blocking what they're trying to do. But that is a dysfunction. It's not going to work because of human nature, but it was on a pathway to completely destroying this country had it not been put in check.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we were so close to the cliff's edge. It's scary to think about just how close what we would have had to deal with under a Kamala Harris presidency. I think that we would have been in far worse shape. I can't even fathom it, actually. Which is, again...
And then
go ahead.
Look how quickly Trump has put Ukraine in check and gotten people to deal with stuff. Well, Biden couldn't. Biden went on, I think it was January, he was on a C-SPAN conference, and he sat down he was at a table on stage, and it was in January, I think it was 2018 or 19. And I was listening, and he was saying, I told him they had to get rid of this prosecutor who was trying to get my son. And I told him that I would blocked 14 billion in loan guarantees that they were trying to get. Now, Article 6 of the Constitution says ratified treaties are part of the supreme law of the land. I just mentioned that. One of the treaties was one negotiated in 1999 by then President Bill Clinton and also ratified by the Senate, and it was with Ukraine. And both signatories agreed to apprehend, detain, and extradite anyone that was wanted by the criminal process of the other. And a few weeks before the November 2020 election, the Ukraine Supreme Court unredacted and published a long multi-count organized crime indictment that named Joe Biden in very many counts of that indictment for extortion, embezzlement, intimidation of witnesses, subornation of treason, and a number of other things. So he was wanted in the Ukraine.
Right.
So we did not get effective foreign policy relative to the Ukraine because Biden was skating along, basically hoping that the indictment would be withdrawn. Now, we don't know whether it has been or not because mainstream media seems singularly uninterested in the aspect of what the Constitution would require that we do relative to Mr. Biden.
Right.
Or if there are reasons primarily diplomatic, because maybe something still remains in his head that he learned while he was in the Oval Office.
Yeah, I think they hid that a long time.
We wouldn't bring him over.
Right. Yeah.
Diplomatic immunity, so to speak. We have a problem, so we had very ineffective foreign policy, and we had Kamala Hyena Harris, who stayed drunk too much of the time, wouldn't listen to briefings, and embarrassingly would devolve into word salad, as the Europeans put it, word salad Annie.
Yeah.
And it was an embarrassing thing that we had to, a spectacle. So we see how diplomacy looks. And even though mainstream media wants to get there and ridicule it, we got a chance to look at how it's supposed to be rather than somebody going. And now, since we are here and there are problems that from yesterday are now there for tomorrow, we have to see them today so we can undo what has gone yesterday so it does not become what happens tomorrow for yesterday. Like, what did you just say, fool?
That's good. You're absolutely right. And could you believe how close we came? It feels like that we're in this alternate reality, Judge. It feels like we're in this completely different world. Like we just split into an alternate reality. We hid the mainstream media. Everybody, I mean, anybody that was paying attention knew that Joe Biden was slipping when they first brought him into office. I mean, this crap they talk about in the media. Oh, this last year we did hide this. I mean, come on. Do they really think that we're that stupid? And then for them, the Democrat Party not even give their party a chance to pick who they wanted. They selected Kamala Harris with this word salad. It's like, which would be worse? I can't tell you.
It's like you were observing the nascent implementation of fascism.
Absolutely.
They did it with their own party. Joe Biden has never been the brightest bulb on a shelf.
Never.
And he's always been a hack, like Hillary Clinton. He's holding his finger up to see which way the wind's blowing, that's the way he'll go. So he's done a lot of damage over the last 50 years, and he concludes his career by doing a lot of damage, and then his party double crosses him and then double crosses the American public by taking somebody who had the lowest ratings in American history, president or vice president, and then showed the contradictions in their position and the reality by being backed up by a media that thought it was slick, that tried to convert this absolute worst case loser into the front runner, which just doesn't happen. So that got put to the lie
Yes. I mean,
by what happened in the last election cycle.
there's only so much stupid you can hide, Judge. And which brings me to another point. So, what is your take? Look, we're sitting here talking about this, and it's laughable now, but I mean, it's almost as if like this is some kind of global push to destroy this nation, right? To take this Constitution and just rip it apart in order to usher us into some global one world government. I mean, I don't know any other explanation than that.
Well, I don't think it's global one world government.
Okay.
I think it is the spread to an international scenario of a cult.
Okay.
Three of the reasons that Putin says that Russia is involved in Ukraine, one, the most important, because it used to be the biggest state in the former Soviet Union, and a lot of Ukrainians want to reunite with a long-term association with Russia. That's one. Two is because after World War II, Stalin would not let the Nuremberg trials deal with the Nazi situation in Ukraine. He said he'd deal with it, but he never got around to it. So Russia is saying we are there to suppress nascent Nazism from resurfacing because Ukraine supplied the biggest supply of active Nazis outside of Germany during World War II.
Yeah.
And the third reason, and this is the one that I think is appropriate to discuss from the American perspective, is because they're trying to spread this rainbow cult.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody wants it. So the Russians are saying we're defending against this effort to emasculate the country, to put this thing in with sports bra, panty wearing sick boys who want to compete against girls and use the girls' bathrooms. We're competing against that whole crazy thing where you get these trannies out there trying to corrupt the children, where we don't teach mathematics. You don't have to memorize your multiplication tables. You don't have to learn to write longhand. You don't have to do homework. In other words, it's just dummying down the republic, but that's part of this rainbow cult agenda. And they're saying the rest of the world is against that. So they're against the rainbow, they're against Nazis, and then they're trying to help those out who want to reunite. That's what Russia is telling the rest of the world, but our so-called free press suppresses that reality and refuses to report on it.
Right, 100%. It's crazy. I think you hit part of the nail on the head. I mean, and what does all of those things lead to? That leads to a degenerate society. That leads to the destroying a nuclear family, total dependency on a government scale, which is about where we've been up until this point, right? So it's astonishing, and then we can't negate the fact that President Trump was not even supposed to be here. President Trump came millimeters from being assassinated, which really changed the course of last year, to be honest. But to go into that kind of depth and think about how close that we've came to really being under this sort of totalitarian fascism, and then here we are with now we've got this dream team and the Doge, and Trump is setting the record straight. I mean, it's been a roller coaster ride, has it not?
Yeah, it has. And one thing for talking points on Doge,
Yes.
let me give you this.
Sure.
In American history, private entities have often done work for the government. Wells Fargo with the Pony Express delivered the mail. Right now, private entities contract to deliver the mail. You have the Pinkertons, who were a private agency, a private detective agency. They did espionage for the Union Army during the Civil War. The Pinkertons guarded the president. They guarded Lincoln until that fateful day when they weren't there, and a U.S. Army major who was a drunk decided he wanted to go to the bar and get a drink, and Lincoln got assassinated.
Right.
They did security for gold shipments. They did a whole lot of investigation and international espionage for the U.S. government. That's the same thing that Doge is doing. It's acting as a civilian entity that is not part of the U.S. government, but is serving the U.S. government. And it is supplying information to the chief executive, who can bring in and consult with friends, associates, colleagues, professors who are not on the government payroll as to what he's going to do in his discretion as chief executive. So what's going on is Doge doesn't have the power, but they have the ear of the chief
influence, right.
executive who can exercise his power as he sees fit after he receives the information. So all of this blah 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 blah, we're getting our rights taken away,
Oh my
and
God.
Trump's trying to look at.
Well, I mean, Judge,
Musk is trying to look at our records. Well, hell, he used to run PayPal, so
right.
he had access to all of these records anyway.
He
They has a top secret clearance with the
Yes.
Defense Department. So, I mean, he's got a lot of access, and technically, you probably got whatever he wanted to find out if he wanted to find out about it.
Exactly. I mean, I've gotten letters in the mail last year saying that my Social Security number is compromised on the black web, the dark web, and there are these talking points about Elon Musk has access to my Social Security number. I'm like, are you kidding me? Anybody that has a credit card is going to get a scammer that's got their last four digits of the social. The talking points are insane. I don't know, Judge, if you've seen the latest video of all this USAID, but somebody compiled a video of about 6 different, Elizabeth Warren and Adam Schifferbrains and all these people with the same microphone, with the exact same talking point. I mean, and they're literally showing, like, this is propaganda to the highest level, and it's all being orchestrated to warp our minds. I mean, people can see right through this, Judge. It's insane.
But here it is. Tell a lie long enough and loud enough, and you can get anyone, including the liar, to believe it.
That's right.
Now, we used to do this to each other long ago when I first started practicing law, just so you'd understand what the process is. We'd tell a tale, and we'd keep telling it to see how long it took for the tale to get back.
Right.
And by the time what we set up as a deliberate, prevarication, something we fabricated on purpose, I heard that. I know you're right because I heard that. Like, where did you hear? I don't remember where I heard it, but I know you have to be telling the truth. How about if we told you it was a lie? Oh, it can't be. And then they'd argue with it. We started it on purpose as an experiment. It's a lie. It's not true. Oh, right. It is true because I keep hearing it. No, we started it so we'd find out if it spread.
Exactly.
It is not the truth.
Right.
But they will argue with you that the lie that you set up as an experiment is in fact the truth.
Oh, yeah.
Or it's like, ever had a song that won't get out of your head and you don't even like the song? It's the same kind of thing. Subconsciously, because you've heard it so often, you associate that with the thing.
Right.
Even if it has no connection with truth. So they do that. And that's basic propaganda. So we have these entities like mainstream media, and they just tell it over and over and over and over again, and it's not true.
Right.
And then they want to do fact checking. We fact check, and he's like, no.
Well, not only that, but
tell when they're doing.
They're propped up by the government slush fund, USAID. We know now that they've been being paid to lie to us. They've been being paid to propagandize to us. It's insane to me. Never seen anything like it.
Yeah, I find it. Yeah, but I find it refreshing.
Right. Okay.
That we are back to where we used to be. See, I've been alive. I was in elementary school when Harry Truman was president of the United States, and we had to pay a little attention to that. We paid attention to Eisenhower. He was president. Then there was JFK.
Right.
Hell, I was in high school going into college, getting ready to go into college. There was LBJ, and then we had Tricky Dick Nixon, then we had Jerry Ford, then Jimmy Carter, then Ronald Reagan, and then George Herbert Walker Bush, and then Bill Clinton, and then George Walker Bush, and then cousin to the Bushes, we had Barack Obama. Then
Right.
we had Trump, and I could see what Trump was doing,
Mm-hmm.
but he was running into a wall from all of this poison that had built up from basically uh,
Well, decades of
the
practice.
Nixon, yeah, 50 some years, a half century of
Right.
dysfunction and the glorification of dysfunction,
Mm-hmm.
not just the practice of it.
That's
In other
100%
words,
true.
it was glorified.
That's
We
right.
stopped getting heroes in the movies for the most part, unless you were looking at Star Wars or something like that,
Yes.
or Battlestar Galactica, and our heroes started becoming pimps, hoes, drug dealers,
Right.
burglars, thieves, bank robbers, you name it. And they prospered. They didn't die in a blaze of glory in the end of the movie, showing you that crime didn't pay. They smoke a long cigar riding in the back of the limo, drinking champagne as they retired with their successful crimes,
Yes.
putting them in a mansion with lots and lots of cash at hand.
100%. You're right. Our culture has so much to do with this and sort of the degeneration of our culture, right? Getting away from God, the Bible, getting away from family, getting away from that independent state, learning how to do things. It's sad in this world, when you think about how far we've gone from that, and now we're trying to claw our way out of this hole and move towards this America first and bringing our country back up on its feet. It's a long way to go, I think, but I'm hoping we can get
Well,
there.
I kind of saw it start
Right. Yes.
late mid 1960s, 67, 68. I saw it. There was a sea change in the way youth, say up to about 30 years, 35 years of age, looked at their lives, and they thought they could do better than the grown folk did because they didn't like some of the things that they didn't think were fair, and they wanted freedom to do what they
Sure.
wanted to do, which now in retrospect looks quite dysfunctional. So they had a group of women, feminists, that hated that they weren't men.
Right.
They had a group of females that hated men. Lesbianism was there. They had a group of guys who hated that they weren't strong. You had a group of guys that hated that they weren't normal men. So you had that. And then you put them together with this anti-war thing, which per se isn't bad, but the way they visualized it was war is a man thing, so men are evil for dealing with war, so change it. Man, man, war is a man thing, man. We've got to change the way boys are raised to men. We got to get them to act like girls, man, so they can cry and shout.
Mm-hmm.
And emote, let it all hang out, man, instead of being so uptight and being violent, man. It's all about love, man.
Peace, love, and happiness.
Yeah. So when you put this mix together, you got a real poisonous movement that started, and there was a interesting thing that enabled it: color television.
Ah,
What
yes.
happened was color television was making the movie industry go broke.
Mm.
Color TVs used to be in round screens about like that, size of a large dinner plate, and then they started getting square like the regular ones. That happened over a 3 or 4 year period, mid 60s. And when that started happening, people stopped going to the movies. Now,
Mm.
the movie industry at that time was very widely dispersed. You had movies in all neighborhoods. And every Thursday and every Sunday, they had two new movies. So that's four per week, plus cartoons. So a movie studio would have to make several hundred movies a year. Well, at that point, it was 50 cents for an adult to go in and middle of a movie, you could walk in
Right.
and you could sit through the half that was still playing. You could watch the cartoons, watch the next movie, a full feature, and then sit through what you missed, or just sit through the whole thing again for continuity as long as you wanted.
Right.
And the studios were going broke. So somebody came up with the bright idea saying, look, let's do something else. Some of these movies are real hit movies, but we change them twice a week anyway, no matter how big they are. So let's just keep them as long as people will come. Okay, well, why don't we just do one movie? And instead of charging 50 cents for two, how about $1.50 for just one?
Right.
Which was a huge expense back then before inflation set in. And they started doing that, and then they started saying, well, how are we going to get the biggest audience? Well, let's make these movies really exciting. Let's have a lot of nudity, sex in them,
Sure.
and let's go to the lowest common denominator. We'll make all of the pimps and drug dealers and everything the heroes, so people will start saying, well, I can do that. And let's start moving drugs. That's popular. You know, that's the new market. Let's glorify cocaine. That's something nobody's ever done.
Right.
Let's see what happens. Let's go to the black community and do black exploitation, because they've got a lot of money that we can get a hold of if we bring them in. So you got a half century where Hollywood, the main influencer of what youth want to do and ideate on doing, becomes essentially a glorification agency for dysfunction.
Now the focal point. Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other thing is, remember, it came out of the Vietnam War. You have no duty, no obligation. There's no such thing as honor. Those are false things that get you to kill and get violent. But we have to go do something about it. And oh, by the way, they started destroying masculinity, which is something that has a lot of protocols that go along with it. So the most violent creature, the most dangerous creature that's ever been on Earth, self-acculturates and socializes so it doesn't kill itself. Well, they took that away. And you can see the difference. If you recall Back to the Future, remember McFly goes back and he props up his dad when dad's in high school. He busts Biff in the jaw, knocks him out. And when he comes back, instead of Biff bullying dad, Biff is a flunky working for dad. So they no longer do that. Oh my God, the children are getting bullied. It's up to the student, well, the faculty and the parents and the police to stop this bullying. And you have the spectacle of an 8-year-old being arrested by the police, and then folks screeching, you put the child in handcuffs. Oh my God. Well, you ask the police to go there and break up the 8-year-old having a fight.
Right. Yeah,
and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You're just trying to destroy manhood because it scares you.
Right. Well, I can tell you right now, after Trump winning this presidency, I mean, what we have already seen this year, where it was today, the 5th of March, I want to pick your brain because I know we're not going to go on too much longer. And you tell me, Judge, how do you feel right now? What is your positivity level, where we're at, and where do you see us going into 2026? Do you think that we're going to have a rough summer, or are they going to try to bring back another summer of love where everybody's fighting and they bring back these racial, dividing people? Or do you think that we're going to be able to power through this and really get some things done?
I think we're going to see the Democratic Party sort of lose its mind and get frantic about what they're doing. But the problem is these aren't really tough people like they were 55, 60 years ago. And they're not going to do what they did then because they're too soft.
Right.
They will burn stuff where the prosecutor smiles at them, and other nationally known prosecutors help raise money to get them out on bond so they can go do the same thing the day after.
Right.
I think that's going to stop.
Certainly if they don't have the money.
I don't think that's going to be facilitated. And the rest of the country is, I think, very ill disposed to put up with that.
I agree.
And remember, the other thing is they're talking about what they're going to do to us, and some of us need to be culled and everything. But remember, they're the ones that have been anti-guns, and we're the ones that have been exercising the Second Amendment. So it's kind of like,
That's right.
I think the American public is going to be in the mood of bring it on. Let's see what you got. You've been running your mouth off a
Yeah.
long time, down in manhood. Now let's see what happens when you bring your sissy self on up in here and try to deal with what you're trying to deal with. It isn't going to work.
Absolutely.
And we're not going to play school kids in a schoolyard where we're just going to scream and holler and fall down dead.
Right. No, I agree with you. I think that we've all learned, a lot of people forget too, especially I would say on the left, we've been through almost a decade of this. We have seen this man be persecuted in every single which way. We've seen the denigration of our culture. Maybe 4 years ago when we were watching our backs or looking around and seeing, I don't think it's going to be that way anymore. I'm pretty dang sure that we're tired of this, and we have the means to move forward. So they're not going to be able to get away with it again, Judge.
Well, and then the other thing too, they blew their cover. The big lie.
Yes.
They had the American public thinking that it was a distinct minority, and the overwhelming majority was on this freak side over there.
Yes.
But we were nervous about what was going to happen out of November, but we didn't need to be, because we found out what the true numbers were, and everybody goes, oh, wait a minute, that's not what they've been saying.
Right.
We shouldn't have had a chance of a snowball in hell, but look, we won.
Right.
We got a pretty heavy vote count here.
Yes.
So they've been lying. Okay, now the bubble is burst. Their credibility is zero, so nobody listens. Oh, that's just crap. Right. Now, I've got friends and relatives that tell me, but how can you say that everybody's done? I said, everybody's not. That's mainstream media lying. Look at this one right here. After that speech, everybody's saying it was a horrible speech. No, they're not. Look at it. This is CNN. They hate him. But they even had to acknowledge that 71% of the people of the country approved this, 19% were against it, and you had basically 10% who were undecided, tying to 10%. I don't know what to think of it. So 71% is an enormous approval rating. That hasn't happened in decades.
Yes, they do everything they can to cover that up, and they can't. They, like you said, it's a straw man. We can see right through it. They have to cover the truth. They're losing everything that they have. So
yeah, and it's like Trump's a racist. Who told you that?
Give me a break.
He's nothing but white supremacy. Well, I'd submit to you that white supremacy got you thinking that way and stuck on stupid, because what has he done to you? Well, it's on. I said, wait a minute. Well, look at what the other side's done to you.
That's right.
Look at all this money being spent. Did you listen to this? It's all a lie. Well, wait a minute. This is general accounting offices. You can go here to .gov, the official U.S. publication, and you'll see that backed up.
That's right.
So what are you talking about? Well, well, wait a minute. All this money he's saving, he's talking about giving everybody a $5,000 bonus for the unused surplus and balancing the budget.
Yes.
Well, he can't do that. Well, do you realize how much money we're talking about got ripped off?
Yeah. And I don't think that anything, I think he coined it well the other night when he said that there's nothing he's going to be able to do to make the Democrats happy, and they're just going to have to sulk in their own whatever it is, because it's a teetotal lie, and they, like you said, they stick out like sore thumbs. So I want to hit you with one curveball. Go ahead, finish.
I loved it when he smacked him upside the head. In other words, instead of saying, there, we have to do it, he said, oh,
exactly.
Go on over there and act your fool.
You're not going to. You can't do anything else to Donald Trump. That's why this whole narrative now is pushed on Elon Musk, because they've exhausted Donald Trump. So go ahead.
It's kind of sort of right here in Memphis. Mr. Musk is trying to open up a AI computer center. It's 85,000 square feet. He needs some gray water, in other words, untreated water for
Hmm.
certain purposes. It's not going to hurt anybody, but the people here in Memphis are trying to hold up the permits
Of course.
because they don't like his politics.
Hmm.
But then again, I'm thinking, I said, oh, we really need a strong federal prosecutor here for U.S. attorney for this district. So you're messing with the guy with the ear of the guy who has to pick that person. Really, this is what you want to do. Go for it.
Right. Amen. Amen. I want to throw you with one curveball. We didn't discuss anything before the show, but I just want to get your take. We have a lot of people talking about term limits and enacting term limits, which would require a convention of states. Can you just give me your kind of overall view on how you feel about convention of states? There's some people that say it's well needed and we need to do this. We need term limits. And then there's other people that say term limits aren't going to solve the issue, and we don't want a convention of states because it will open us up too much for constitutional changes that we don't need. Can you give me your thoughts?
I take the latter position. I don't think the American public is wise enough now to be trusted with a constitutional convention. We need another decade or two of putting back in schools what I got. When I was in the fifth grade, most of what I dealt with as a judge was already in my head because they taught us, but they don't even teach it in law school.
That's what I
There
hear.
have been surveys over the last few decades, and guess what? Less than 25% of the sitting judges and practicing lawyers have actually read the whole Constitution, which takes about 15, 20 minutes for the average high school graduate to read completely through. It's a lot simpler than the rules of the road you have to go through when you're trying to get your driver's license the
Right.
first time. So, with that said, I don't get it. The other thing with term limits, I would make this observation. If you pay careful attention to what's being reported, people get turned out of office all the time. Democrats are in charge and then they're no longer in charge. Republicans are in charge and then they're no longer in charge. And what's going on is something of a con game that's being pulled on us because the rule is if you don't want your senator or your House representative, they go. But the problem is everybody loves their particular representative. Look at all the people that keep voting for Maxine Wastewater.
Exactly.
You know, they
Right.
vote for her, for Nancy Pelosi
Yeah, and
gets elected overwhelmingly. They like her.
they
But the
like her.
main
She's
problem,
doing the job that they want her to do in that area, right?
yeah. So if they didn't like her, she'd be turned out. And the problem with term limits is things have gotten so complex now that you get the typical ideologue elected to office. He sits in there, and for the first few months, he does not know what parliamentary procedure is, Robert's Rules of Order. He can't work around what's going on in the House or the Senate because he doesn't know the rules. It takes him a while to learn the rules so he can know what he needs to do. And those rules are in place because when you get a lot of people who are trying to make a name for themselves and shout out representing their constituencies, you have great potential for a lack of order. You saw that with Al Green, the
That's
Democrat,
right.
getting off protocol when he was rude and disrespectful to the president.
Right.
Now, you have these rules. It takes them a long time to learn the rules. Now, you have somebody sitting on a committee that's dealing with finance. It takes somebody who does not have an educational background in high finance and economics quite some time to know what the devil is going on with in his committee. It takes some years. By the time most people are termed out on the state level, they're just learning what their job is supposed to be, let alone how to do it. And then you get more newbies. And then what you wind up getting is ideology dictates what's going on rather than practicality, wisdom, and discernment and experience.
Yes.
So I'm not exactly for term limits when it comes to people who are in the House and the Senate, because the people have the remedy and those folk lose their offices all the time.
Right.
So I don't see an inability to turn folk over.
Right.
Now, some of the worst idiots, AOC et al., that we have, Jasmine Crockett, that are in Congress, that's because their districts are not impressive. They've got an old saying in America, which is this: in a system like ours, constituents get the representation they deserve.
Right.
The representation is crap. That's because they're crap. So what we're looking for is an insoluble situation, which is Jasmine Crockett is ignorant as the devil. Her wig weave, I guess, and her false eyelashes have absorbed all of her brain material,
Oh,
so
Lord.
she doesn't have anything in her skull left to think with. But then that means she reflects her constituents who are just
Right.
as stuck on stupid as she is.
Right. We've got to get past that as
what
a
are
culture.
You gonna do? Yeah, what are you going to do about the stupid constituents that are out there? They're going to not re-elect if the term limits, just elect a more naive but stupid edition of what they already have.
Judge,
So,
yeah.
I mean, we can't do anything about the constituencies.
Well,
and that's the real problem, not the people that represent them.
That's right. It's a long game. I'm so glad that you're bringing this up, because this is something we've been kind of lied. I mean, I'm not saying we've been lied to about term limits. I've always believed term limits is a good thing, but I'm starting to understand now that this is something different. This is a ploy that will create sort of a lame duck machine that's not going to help anything. And our long-term goal needs to be changing our culture, getting people back educated again, bringing people together, learning the law, that kind of stuff. And that's the uncomfortable truth, I think, that people don't want to hear. So
I'll tell you something. I was consulting for some people that were in Congress. It's been a while. One particular person was head of a committee, been in there 19 years at the time. And I went off on him. I said, wait a minute. You don't know anything about this. Well, we've got a real bright kid that's doing it. Yeah, but he's 22 years old. He just got out of college. Well, he's 23 now. So you're telling me that you've been head of this committee for 19 years old, and you've got a 23-year-old, nobody elected on your staff who is effectively making policy for the millions of people in the United States of America, not you. What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
It stinks.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens when you have term limits is you bring in 22, 23-year-old interns and new staff members who stay there for a while. And instead of the person elected to the office, you have some 20-something-year-old that has never paid any bills in life, has no family to raise in life, no responsibilities, likely as not come from a background where mama and dada have given them everything they want. They are entitled little pampered, poodle, spoiled brats, and that's who's supposed to be formulating policy for the United States of America. Now, granted, there are some people that get to the top through seniority that are some pretty awful specimens, and we see a lot of them. But for every Maxine Wastewater or a Nancy polluted OC, we've got some that are decent, long-suffering servants of the people. So I am ambivalent on the thing about changing the rules, because to me, the rules only facilitate the people, and it's the people that count. And if the people have put up with it, it's their fault. So instead of trying to come up with a sop to correct their deficit, meaning I want to watch this ball game, I don't have time to listen to this nonsense.
Right.
They're just politicians and they're all crooked, et cetera, et cetera. I want to watch the game. Yeah, man, it's a heavy game. Gee, man, I want to watch who's going to do this, man. Jesus Christ, Chucky. Who you think's going to win up in here in this damn game? You think Dallas going to get it again? And see, instead of
Yep.
paying attention to something that actually impacts their day-to-day lives, they're falling into the trap that Julius Caesar talked
Bread
about
and circus.
2,000 some years ago. Bread and circus.
You got it, man. And
That's it.
you're right. That's why we're out
So
here
I
doing what we're
look at
doing.
term limits as an excuse not to get personally engaged.
Wow.
Now, maybe we need term limits, but I'm looking at a whole lot of people who don't want to put in their obligatory responsive
That's right. What's the point of
engagement.
what's the point of term
Yeah.
limits if we're not holding them accountable to begin with, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh man, listen. I just want to. I know we're running a little past, and I don't want to keep you, but and I will get to everybody's comments, but I'm gonna let the judge loose here in a minute. I just want to tell you, man, you're a national treasure. We absolutely love you. A lot of us we follow you all the time, and it's always great. And I just wanted to personally just thank you for giving me this opportunity to interview you. I know we've tried a couple of times in the past, and I'm so grateful it worked. But we just appreciate your voice being out there, the voice of reason and common sense. And I'm really looking forward to seeing a brighter future, a more America First future that we can all celebrate together. So
Yeah, we have our problems, but we are a family.
That's
we
right.
all live in the United States of America. We are on this all-American team.
yes,
And I played football in high school and a bit in college. And, there are players on the team you can't stand, but you still block for them or they block for you. And, it's all part of the team. You are in a big family. You have people that you like in the family and people you can't stand in the family. But they're all part of it, and we're all supposed to work together. So we have to do that. And we need to stop listening to people who have gotten lazy and they've let their character slide and want to blame the system for what they can easily do something about.
right. 100%, man. Well, listen, I just want to tell you, sir, you are welcome anytime on this show, and I'll make sure that we get the link out to you. And again, thank you for your time, sir.
Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
You can find me on X at Judge Joe Brown
Yes.
TV.
Gotcha.
At Judge Joe Brown TV. And the summer's coming up, so you might as well practice your barbecue techniques. And I have a great barbecue product. It's called Judge Joe Brown Barbecue.
Right
And
on.
you can get it on Amazon, and they sell out every month, and we have to rush deliveries to replenish their stocks. And delivery's free if you have Amazon Prime. We
Yes, sir.
have spicy and mild, and we've got seasoning, spicy, mild. We have chicken links, smoked and raw, hot and mild, and we have the same with beef links and beyond meat links, which are delicious. So indulge yourself, but you'll have to go to the website for those latter products, and that's just JJB, Judge Joe Brown, Barbecue, BBQ. So it's JJ3Bs.com, and you can order it online.
Absolutely, and
I had to put that in.
Oh, please! I'm just a small town dude. I forget about that, but I promise you, we're going to get your links up. We're going to link up with you on X. In fact, this is live on X right now on Small Town Underground. There's hashtag Small Town UG, and we'll get all them links up there. And you better believe I'm going to be getting me some of that sauce here shortly. So,
2 thumbs up.
thank you so much.
Thumbs up.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you, man. You need anything, you holler. Oh, wow. Okay, guys. That was amazing. Right. Amazing that we got Judge Joe Brown with us. And wow. So let's see here. I want to... There we go. So I want to go ahead and enter a comment. So that we started the show late because he was running late. And he came in. I decided to do that. I was going to do the show at... go ahead and do it at 15 after, and right as I'm starting the intro, he was coming in. So it kind of freaked me out a little bit, and I'm like, okay, I got to roll with this. So I don't want to leave the comments, but I didn't want to keep Judge too long. I told him we'd do an hour. So let me go back really quick to everybody. And wow. So that was awesome. just a little bit of backstory, and I won't keep you guys long. You know, Judge, myself, we worked on the big event with Lucretia, and he was supposed to be down there, but he had a scheduling conflict, and so we ended up like piping him in on a TV, and then we was in Floyd County with Gordon Rawl and Kayla Knowles doing the event, and he couldn't make it in on the video when we did the live stream, so we ended up doing a phone interview in a building with a metal roof, and it was just so choppy, but we did it anyway. And so I sent a special thank you to Gordon Rawl for helping me get all this up. And Judge and I have been talking 2 weeks, so I was kind of freaking a little bit that I wasn't going to get him, but sure enough, he's there, and just an amazing dude. He's so smart, and he's got it going on. So here we go, really quick. Lisa Adams, Aaron Spears. Yes, we finally did it, y'all. We finally got Judge Joe Brown on the show, and that was amazing. Smatter Chew, good to see you. Leslie Smathers, hey. David Naha, tuning in a little late. That's all right, buddy. We were running late. Thank you, David. And Barbara, my mother, thank you. It worked. Angela says, good to see you, Angela. We just got done filming down in Floyd County with her. And Scotty Martin, good to see you. Dorothy, Tyler Lee, good to see you. And yeah, it was great. Joe Brown, I don't know if you guys are, if any info warriors out there, he comes on sometimes and does some with AJ, and I've been like I said, I've been fascinated. He's a wealth of knowledge, and he's still kicking it, man. So let's see, a bunch of reprobates in our government from Angela. Absolutely correct. I wanted to push him a little bit on this Fonnie Willis $2 billion and the $18 billion earmark, but we never really got a chance to go into that segment. But he's well aware that we have issues, especially Fulton County, Fonnie Willis, and our election systems, and so we're boots on the ground changing that. And David says, we are many that will stand the way of these treasonous frauds. You got it. You got it. So Carol Streeter, good to see you. And you guys can help me share this out, because I kind of frantically shared it as much as I can. But you can share it to help me share it to all the groups. And David says, prayers, we have election integrity, move forward tomorrow. My heart is heavy and prayer is strong. And thank you for all the boots on the ground that made those phone calls today. It took me 12 minutes on my lunch break to make these calls. And I know a lot of people out there did. So it will make a difference. And Barbara says, spot on. David, I've been trying to explain that Elon is not the man in charge. We all here know he just reports and recommends. Most really think he's calling the shots. Look, this is a whole narrative. You know, they've exhausted Donald Trump. They've exhausted everything they could about the man. They've tried him every which way, shape, and form. So now they have to go to a new target, which is Elon Musk. And we can easily see this is just another psyop to continue to have the shield of something to run with, you know. Let's see. Michael Proctor, good to see you with us tonight. Thank you, sir. Michael says, if they don't prosecute these people who ended up with these funds, no reason it won't happen again. They need to set examples. 100%. I kind of wanted to talk about Epstein files, but I didn't think we had a little segue into that. I wanted to stay mostly on the law with him. Joe Johnson, good to see you, says we need to enforce the Constitution. You're exactly right. Don't need to change the Constitution. That everything is laid out. It's already there for us. Our freedom of speech, our Second Amendment, everything is laid out. We just need to enforce the Constitution, and we're not enforcing it, and we've got to get back to that. Let's see, term limits. I wanted to pick his brain on term limits because it's a situation you got to think about. You know, I've always agreed with term limits, but when you talk about a convention of states, and I wanted him to explain that on how you're actually opening up the Constitution. There's, you know, that you're talking about changing a Constitution. Changing a Constitution is already there that we're not even following to begin with, and you want to change it. There's no telling when you do a convention of states what you're going to change or what will be changed in that. So it's a very slippery slope, and we need to understand all aspects, because believe me, I've always loved term limits, but he said the same example we used with Arthur Hampton. You know, the people that voted for Nancy Pelosi, even if there's term limits, they're going to vote in somebody worse than Nancy Pelosi in the next 2 years. Well, we're not doing our diligence in holding these people accountable to begin with, right? So something to think about. And same with our local elections, absolutely. Richard Schroeder, good to see you. Rich says AOC a millionaire now. I'm pretty dang sure, Richard, that she's a millionaire now. Yeah, absolutely. So he said the math doesn't add up, which is probably something we talked about. David Naha says we decide the term limit of our representation. If their constituents continue to put them in office, then they know what to expect. It's the responsibility of locals to bring awareness because, unfortunately, the majority of our community vote on a ticket only without any clue how that representative has actually worked for their interest. Well said. This is why we're doing what we're doing. We are trying to bring transparency and accountability. We're trying to get the public engaged in the election process. We want better representation. We want transparent representation. The only way we're going to do that is to continue to bring people together and to vote the right people in that are going to do the right job, not become millionaires, not take their job seriously, and use the Constitution in every decision that they make, right? All right. Dorothy says, best show ever. Love Judge Joe. God bless you both. Thank you. It's been a long time coming, but I'm just glad that he came on. All right. Like I got scared there for a minute, but he is a man of his word, and he's never stuck us up. Now, he's always had some issues, but man, I mean, he's a killer guy, and he's a very eloquent explainer too. So Nathan Huggins says, Joe got it figured out. Absolutely. Good to see you, Nathan. Dana Bridges Tate says, what did he call Maxine Waters? What did he call her? Maxine, I'll have to go back and look. So, and thank you, Lisa. Great show. Davis, God bless you. Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. And I love Judge Joe Brown, too. Man, it's so crazy. This is by far, Dr. Frank and Joe Brown's my biggest guest. But just to know that I was a kid when he was, like, on TV. And, I mean, I watched him sometimes, especially whenever my kids were little and we had the TV going on. But it's amazing, and it's amazing that he still just got it, man. He still got it, the fire. So, yeah, absolutely. And Perry Byers, good to see you. Says, love the blunt talk. You're always going to get blunt talk with him. That's my favorite kind of people. And Enerd Bread, Doge, Georgia, 70-plus counties in the Doge pack. It's growing fast. Proud of everyone. Great show tonight. And if you're still on, please feel free to message me because we're trying to get Doge in many, many more counties, and we got people working on it. There's a little bit of confusion about it, but we absolutely need this, and this does not need to be a single-year Doge. This needs to be a permanent fixture in everything we do, part of that public sort of private transparency. So, yeah, I'm glad to hear people are getting in on that. And Peach Steak, girl, good to see you. Says, I missed the live today. Hasn't been the best day. We'll tell you later. Great job. Thank you, and no problem. And it's going to be out there, guys. And no problem if you missed it. It's going to be there, and I'm going to be posting it to YouTube ASAP. Again, thank y'all for being here with me tonight, and a wonderful time with Judge Joe Brown. And we're going to get out of here, and tomorrow, Thursday, we'll be down the Chattooga GOP. We'll be filming David Cross and Amy Kremer will be there, a special guest. I'm going to be filming that, so looking forward to seeing that. We got many, many more things coming. And you guys, thank y'all and have a wonderful evening.
Legislature legalized unverifiable voting in 2000.
Like you said to Trump, but they're getting beauty.
They said, go out there and rob these houses and bring back the bounty, and then that'll pay your way.
Because Republicans who get endorsement from Georgia areas that they mean anything.
You can't sit on the sidelines any longer. You must get involved in the game. This is your sign.